and we are going to cross our fingers that I was able to get everything connected.
I see the
Ah,
live
yeah,
now. There it
we are
is.
live. We're live, y'all. It's working this time. We
What?
fixed it.
What was it?
Uh, I'll talk you through it
Yeah, we
later.
don't know.
It's
Okay, great.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
no. It's a little bit multiple steps. We'll chat about
Yeah.
it later. But we're live. We're here.
Hey. Do you wanna play the song?
I feel like we dance this dance every week.
You,
Eric,
you wanna play the song?
play the song so that we can all just sit here.
Oh, you're
in front of
right.
our
You're right. That's dead
cameras.
air. Okay, never mind. All right,
Yeah.
all right, all right. So we'll just intro it straight.
Yeah, just jump right on in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What the Hype discussing HBO's The Last of Us. This week, it's season 2, episode 6. Do we have a title yet? Have we figured
It
this
is
out?
called. I got
Chelsea's
the
got it.
notification. The price. The price.
The Price.
Oh, well. Yeah, I guess that is appropriate.
Yep.
There are two ways in which I suggest that we measure this episode. And the first way is in the number of buckets that Chelsea filled while crying, while
Me
watching.
specifically. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, you specifically, or all of us. Like how many buckets? All right, who's got the bucket? But it was a real tearjerker. We got a lot of Pedro Pascal as Joel. This was mostly a conglomeration of flashbacks that really fill in the gaps, not just between season 1 and season 2 and the events thereof, but the gaps that were present with some of these other characters and their relationships that we've been getting hints of or references to throughout the episodes we have got. So I found it to be very exciting, but the person I first want to ask is, and by the way, Laura and Chelsea, you're both here. I want to ask Pam, who we have. Pam,
Hello.
who have just for the first time learned of these events that these characters have shared in the past. What did you think of this episode?
Oh, I loved it. It's like I think that this is probably the closest we're going to get to another fishbowl episode. I think that worked really well last season for episode 3, and so it was really nice to just be condensed into this timeline of checking in with Ellie and Joel every year on Ellie's birthday. Like Chelsea, I'm way too soft, so I also was over here with my bucket for the tears.
Yeah, this is the one week I'm not drinking coffee. I've got tears that I'm drinking this week.
You're drinking your own
So your
tears?
coffee is extra salty. I know that all too
Oh.
well. No, but and then I also, because I think we all stay tuned to watch the little making up featurette that they tack on to the end of every episode. It's just incredible to me, again, as the only person on this panel who has not played the video game, that so much of this, save for the flashback to Joel's teenage years, was actually in the game. It just like the level of detail in the storytelling that comes from the original IP continues to astound me, because you just wouldn't think that, like, it just feels like it would be almost like unnecessary for them to kind of show you that in a game. Some game makers might find it unnecessary, I guess, to like take the time to slow things down and have you go through a montage of flashbacks through a museum, through, like climbing a dinosaur and stuff like that. So I think that
Yeah.
all really kind of helps people like me realize like just how fleshed out this world was before Craig Mazin and HBO took it on.
That's
100%.
a heck of a point, yeah. And to look at this episode and go, that was in a video game before, like,
Right.
and I will say to your comment about the essential like number of flashbacks and things, they were scattered throughout the game. And in fact, I think I'll want to get Laura and Chelsea's opinion on how it felt having them all in one episode. But I think it was given, it was elevated and it was given new sort of purpose while still, gathering all the greatest moments between Ellie and Joel. What would you
It was
guys?
also just the final piece of the puzzle for people like me going in blind because we didn't have a touchstone for what happened. And like, so then if you take all of that out of context, like in the way they gave us, you just have to assume that Ellie probably found out about what happened with the Fireflies, decided not to forgive Joel at all. And then it was a combination of like that and normal teenage angst, which would
Mm.
make so much sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, like, in addition to that, this episode does a really nice job of leaving us feeling a little bit better with the knowledge that they were on the path to reforging their relationship and that she had chosen forgiveness.
Mhm.
Yeah. I do want to take a moment to shout out M, who is joining us over on YouTube, chatting with us in our live stream. So M is saying, HBO spoiled me with The Pit's 15 episodes. So I guess The Pit had 15 episodes in its season. I can't believe it's the season finale of The Last of Us next week. I feel like we've barely started the season. Same. Same. And I
Yeah.
know we will touch on that because that was a thought that I was having throughout this episode.
Are we on par, like, without spoiling me and also people like me, are we on par to, like, completely finish the whole arc for The Last of Us 2, the game? Like,
No.
okay.
Yeah, I was even about to say not even close.
Not even
Okay,
close.
so like,
yeah.
so okay, because I know that that was a big question a lot of people had, was like, are they just going to be done with
E-
IP
yeah.
material after season 2?
No, there's so much more.
Yeah.
I'm trying to put like quick, rough, dirty percentages to it, but closest I can come up with is like 33%, and
That's nothing.
that's
wow.
no, but that like number seems high to me. Like, but
Okay.
they're being clever with it. Like, there are things in there that don't really come into later, but because they have to like present it as being true, you do get a lot of stuff from the outside world. All the stuff with the Seraphites, all the stuff with the wolves are like, they managed a way to really show us a lot of that stuff, which is great. But yeah, there is so much more with the narrative and with Ellie. For being as focused on the show or on Ellie as this show has been this season, there is still way more to come with her. There's more to come with Abby. I know I say the name Abby, everybody's like, who? I promise you, she's this character that I think they're going to introduce in this season. Actually spend some time with maybe. Would be great, and really just there's so much more. Pam, oh, you're in for a ride. But
Yeah.
I'll say, going into the looking ahead, kind of the finale, I am of a place where I guess I was initially apprehensive or skeptical of like, why are there too fewer episodes this season? Where are they going to end it? How could it possibly be satisfying? Because there's so much of this game that's not going to make it in the show. So why would they end it early? Whatever. Looking ahead, knowing that we only have one episode left, I will say I am equally, or I'm actually just excited for how little I know about what choices are going to be made next episode. Like, it seems like because there's more than your usual amount of material that they could pull from to include, it's not like any one thing happens in the next moment in time after the closing scene of this episode, if that makes sense. It's like, depending on what they're going to show us, is literally they have so much they could show us. So it's wild.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. I really don't know what to expect in the next episode. Like, are we picking up with Abby? Like, there's part of me that feels like it makes no sense and there's no way that they end this season without having some kind of touch point with Abby.
Oh,
But I don't know because I mean you mentioned the point, Eric. Abby who, like, that I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. I mean, we definitely heard from, I know Micah had communicated that he was like, wait, like, how are we supposed to buy that this character we've like never seen, never met before, we have no like frame of reference for them. Like, how are we supposed to buy that they did this? And then we don't see them all season. Like, that, I think that is probably my major season critique so far, is like the lack of Abby. And I was really hoping that we were at least going to get a taste towards the end of this episode, like maybe get some of the Abby flashback sequences, which we know there are, just like there are Ellie flashback sequences.
To contextualize for
Yeah.
Pam, Abby is the other main character you're playing as in Last of Us Part 2. It's Abby and Ellie, and they're the two main characters and equal main characters. So, I think there was a very clear decision to put a lot of Abby's stuff in the next season, and it seems clear to me after watching especially this, clip episode of all these flashbacks that happened to Jackson, this really is the season of the Jackson people. Ellie will be in, the next season, and she will continue on a path. But I think that what this season did is almost what I was praying it would do at the end of the last season, which is I needed more time with Joel. I wanted this entire season to be kind of a leading up to what happens to him and what ended up happening to him in episode 2. But because the main characters haven't really gotten past that moment emotionally, we are still getting kind of that extended season where your heart is still in Jackson, your eyes are still on the floor of that cabin going, oh my God, I can't unsee what I just saw. Like, I think that in a strange way, given all of the emotion of tonight's episode, we really are getting that like eulogy and just like a somber kind of look at what has happened and what's going to happen next. So I don't know, the fact that this season has been kind of narrow in its focus compared to where it could be has ended up giving me more of what I wanted, I think, in terms of focusing on the characters that we knew last season and very little about the characters that we need to know for the next season.
Right. I think a phrase that we've used a lot in talking about The Last of Us as a property as a whole is boldness in storytelling. And they're sticking to those bold story points of the games. But what I also appreciate is that they're taking a bold approach in adapting the game for this season. Like, they could have done a one-for-one transfer narratively, just like they did with just like main story points that we've gotten so far. We could have had that back and forth between Ellie and Abby and Ellie and Abby, and they chose not to do that. And we will see, especially going into season 3, I think is when we can really start to determine if that's for good or for not. But right now, I'm appreciating following Ellie's emotional arc by herself and dealing with the trauma of being a teenager and a teenager in these times specifically, and having lost Joel twice in a couple of ways, right? She lost him when she found out about, or like had the notion that he lied to her confirmed with the scene with Eugene, which we'll talk about. And then to make that step towards reconciliation with him, to have him snatched away from her again. And so like we're dealing with that kind of loss, and then the revenge that she's pursuing. So I like that this season is shaping to be entirely Ellie's arc. And it's in response to this terrible thing that Abby did in taking Joel away from her. And so we already said Abby's the other main character that we play as in the game. And so we're going to get more of her. And so right now I'm just waiting to see what Mazin and Druckmann and Hallie Gross do going forward to give us the other half of the story. And I'm still at the point where I have that trust in them that they're going to do it in a way that's going to be satisfying, even if the gamers here, and even people who aren't the gamers, like I listened to y'all's mailbag episode, and I know there has been some sort of discontent over the lack of Abby, but I don't know. I think there's some merit in following Ellie exclusively and her being in the dark as to who Abby is and what she's doing and all of that stuff. I don't know. I think that is to the show's narrative benefit and could lead to really interesting things going into season 3.
A week ago,
Yeah,
I
I
would have
don't
called you
know.
crazy. But
I
now,
was
after
gonna
tonight's
say-
episode, I agree with you.
Yeah, like 2 days ago, you would have called me crazy when we were
Yeah,
texting about this.
but no, now because of how focused this episode was on Ellie, where she's been at emotionally, I'm like, okay, I can see it. I have the vision now. Sorry, Pam. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I don't know if they could have gone from what we got in season 2 straight into like Abby gameplay, for lack of a better word, right on the
Yeah.
show. I think that we needed that time to like sit in the rage that Ellie provides, because I just don't think that like we as the audience was ready, you know. And it sounds like from what you all have clued me into that you get gameplay with Abby before she does what she does, so it's kind of a bit of a sleight of hand or like a backdoor. They pull the rug out from under you. And since they didn't do that, well, they did that in one episode for us on the television show. Yeah, I don't think that like the audience is ready yet, but they might be, you know, based on how they set things up in
That's
the
what
finale, which I can't believe that the finale's already next week.
I know.
So,
Well, they will, I
no
think,
point.
and this is not a criticism, but they will have to kind of reintroduce Abby to us in some way. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
also it's actually been too much time from when she did what she did for her to just show up and be there in front of us, unless that's like, you know, the gag of like, oh my
Yeah.
God, here she is. Because like, I would like to see one like scene with her before the next Ellie Abby confrontation just to get some kind of a bearing, because something that I thought was really meaningful in episode 2 is after she does the deed, after she kills Joel, she's walking away from the cabin with the rest of her crew and she looks miserable. She doesn't look relieved. She's not like, that feels so good. Like she's probably haunted in the way that Nora indicated that, you know, there were repercussions that we just don't know about from like emotionally. There was a
Yeah.
toll on each of them for what they did. And so I'm hoping that, yeah, you know, next week, I assume there will be Abby, and you know, I'm very interested in knowing exactly what the show's going to do, because we went back to 1983 on tonight's episode. Like this show can
I
go
love
anywhere
that.
and do
Yeah.
anything, and that's the start of this episode. So let's talk about it. But first, let's hear from our sponsors. We're back. Now let's go in a more granular scene by scene type way or manner and talk about this early flashback. Now, Pam, I hate to, you know, spoil and reveal all, but the super young Joel flashback was not a gameism. That was made all for the show, and I think it provides a wonderful framing device for this whole episode and in fact entire lives in particular. So we get a scene with the love of my life, Lalo Salamanca, Mr. Dalton, who
I love seeing him too.
is playing a Jay Miller, and is essentially Tommy and Joel's abusive cop father. But we see, and this is a scene that has been kind of added context to from the making of, in showing that what we're sort of meant to get out of it, what we do get out of it, is that Joel's father kind of confesses in this moment that he doesn't know what he's doing. And immediately we can find the connections between how, you know, Joel's father parented him and Tommy, and how Joel has kind of been off kilter a little bit, or made to be off kilter from having to parent Ellie. And it was there with Sarah in the very first episode, but that was a long time ago. We just see it, you know, mostly with how Ellie trips him up constantly. And the goal is, I guess, to do it better, right, than his own father did.
Yeah, you break the cycle, and Joel breaks the
Exactly.
cycle. You can't imagine him raising a hand toward Ellie, no matter how much he loves her, right? But he still understands that even if he doesn't, you know, like hit her, that he can still cause her, you know, like at least like emotional damage. So I think the idea of like, you know, if like you're in my place one day, I hope you do a little better than I did. I feel like that's such a nice bookend, and I think that that's a very real thing. You know, like I like that's something that like my parents even like grew up telling us, like, I hope you guys do. It was more like an aspirational thing though, like not like like coming from like a sense of like maybe you'll abuse your kids a little less than I did. It was more like, you know, we got this far in life, and I hope you guys do better, a little better than we did. and I hope your kids do a little better than us, you know, so you're constantly trying to improve the family line.
I think that's true about
Yeah.
everything, right? You want your kid to have more than you did. You want your
Right,
kid to have
exactly.
more, like even in terms of if you were to count the days of happiness, you want them to have that more because you love
Mm-hmm.
somebody. Joel has kind of gone in the other direction, like not, taking a belt to Ellie, but taking guns to everyone else that would kill her. So it's an interesting, sort of extraordinary, like he's still hurting her emotionally, which is what is brilliant about what you said, but
Yeah. By
he,
lying to her,
yeah.
Right.
right?
But he thinks that he's only doing the best he can. He thinks that he's doing right by her by doing that. She doesn't need to know the horrors or like the lengths he will go to protect her. And you have to remember too, like, I mean, like, obviously everybody's been through a lot, but she's still so young when he does all of that, that like, wouldn't you also want to preserve someone's innocence in a way if you're the adult in that situation? I think that's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines from the early scene with young Joel and his dad is that if you know what it feels like, as in abuse from your parent, then why would you still do this? And that to me is really like an emotionally mature kind of insightful question to ask. And that one, for no particular reason, hit me in the feels of why do some of us feel like we're trapped in a cycle of abuse, or why? Because you would think that this would be a problem that empathy could solve and introspection could solve, and it's not. It's slightly more complicated than that, probably.
Yeah, yeah, and I will apologize if you hear like whining and crying in the background. That is my dog. She's being extremely needy, and she's fine. She just really wants attention. But yeah, I mean, I think the point of it is that each and every one of us is raised with a blueprint of what it looks like to be a parent, right? And it's what our own experience was. And the idea of like that constant iteration with each generation where you get a little bit better and, maybe you don't do everything perfectly. In fact, you're never going to do everything perfectly. But if you really address the top things that were traumatizing for you in childhood and you prioritize making sure you don't pass that down, that's you doing harm reduction, is I think the way Joel might look at it and his father might look at it, to say, hey, it doesn't justify anything, but I did this part better because of what I experienced. So it really does, I think, again, speak to that cycles of violence theme that we keep seeing in this show over and over. And just want to shout out M, who's still with us on YouTube, and
Hey,
point that
Em.
out. Yeah. We also heard from Laz, who, this is an interesting thought. I want to see what you think of this. For me personally, I think I can see this episode being split up and given to us over the course of the season. I feel like it would have made us miss Joel even more. So, like, having, because these were like vignettes. They were broken up
They
from
were in the
the
game.
episode. Yes. But
Yes,
also
and
like
oh,
in the way they're
tonight
shown.
too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
tonight as well they were.
Yeah. The narrative line of that this episode had, which they relished and is kind of smart, of it all being on her birthday, various her birthdays
Mhm.
throughout the years. I actually really liked that. But
Me too.
I am now gonna say, and I was somebody that wanted Pedro Pascal in every episode of this season. I'm on record saying that. I think that that might have been worse, and I think that that would have felt either cheap, or it would have taken a few minutes away from getting the story to where it needed to be for next week. Or I mean, again, hindsight being 2020, like I think I'm willing to support how they did things tonight, because the second Pedro Pascal comes on screen, every bone in my body that has been missing him would immediately go, oh my God, Joel's back. And I wouldn't be able to digest properly literally the rest of the story. And I think people would be watching these episodes if you're still mourning Joel for those 5 minutes you're going to get with him. So I don't know. I think making us wait was sort of smart, given that this episode had gratuitous Joel. It had, I can't think of any major flashback scene with Joel that was left out, besides one that was changed. But, I think that instead what we got was kind of a recontextualization, I think Hallie Gross says in the making of where Ellie has been at and why she's fighting. And so to do it all at once made sense for the show.
I'm going to withhold judgment until I see the finale. I feel at this stage, I'm feeling a little uncertain still about the pacing, just because, one, there is still so much story left, and obviously we knew we weren't going to get the whole game in this season, but I also thought we might be closer to the halfway point by the end of this season than we are. And there's been a lot of additional exposition that I've loved, where they've really added to the story and really added context to Dina and Ellie's relationship, and it's been absolutely beautiful. It also feels like there is a lot of key material from the story that we haven't gotten to yet, and I am still concerned that not enough has been done to establish why Abby's character is so important and what the message is behind Abby and Ellie being foils to each other. That's a big theme in the game. So I need to withhold judgment. It's still a masterful show, and tonight's episode was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it start to finish, and this doesn't make me not like this show or anything like that. I'm very curious about what they're gonna do, but I am definitely a little bit nervous, I guess.
Chelsea, how do you
I really
feel?
want to like it.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
Yeah. I also appreciated that we got all of this all at once. I think, again, if they had spread it out, I don't know if I would have had negative feelings about that. I just appreciated that they gave it to us in a different way than in the game. I did like the couple of little added or recontextualized or adjusted scenes, like the whole Eugene thing we'll talk about when we get to it.
Yeah.
But that, I loved that and how it set up Ellie's journey and her falling out with Joel. I liked that trajectory right there. But yeah, I mean, I still am at a place where I have faith that even if by the end of season 2, it's not entirely clear what the path is going forward, that by the time we have season 3 and are going through it, or even by the end of season 3, that the story as a whole will have made sense to us why they told it the way they did.
Yeah, I'm kind of riding on that too, I think, for sure. But also because, again, with sort of the opening questions of Abby and just how much they will show us in order to sort of cement her or show her as the foil. Like the making of episode 2 talked about how similar Abby and Ellie are, and I'd kind of like to see that be shown. But there's actually still quite a bit of plot that has to happen before I think that we can get that. So I'm wondering if next week's episode is going to be like 90 minutes long, maybe 120 minutes, maybe 300 minutes. Yeah, why not?
Honestly, I'm really hoping for that because it does not feel like there's been enough airtime this season.
Total?
I want more.
It's like when you get in Andor, you get to that like 36-minute episode and you're like, what? Why?
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, hold the fuck on a second.
I can't speak to runtimes because the making of screws me up every time. I'm like, oh, 58 minutes. And then it's like, wait, it ends technically at like 43. And then you have the next
Yeah.
one. And then you have the, yeah. So I get it. But yeah, it's interesting because there's no shortage of content written that has been performed in some way that's made it to the video game. You assume that when they adapt that, there'll be even more because the show is doing a great job at actually widening and contextualizing, like adding new stuff that fits perfectly and gives us an even more well-rounded view than what the game impressively already does with these characters, these settings, the infected, everything. So there's several seasons worth of content left, I think it's safe to guess at. But if you're feeling like as Laura is that there hasn't been enough airtime, what does that mean for, like, again, what excited the showrunners to stop it where they're going to stop it? And that's kind of I asked that question with like a sense of glee of like I don't know, and it's kind of exciting me because it has to be
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I really don't know what it's going to be because she just killed Nora. And I mean, we all know there's a lot that has to
There's a
happen
few other
between.
people you got to go through before that. I
Yeah.
mean, and the next week on, we see Isaac getting in a boat. I mean, come on, guys. Like there's a lot going on. Although a lot of that is happening kind of chronologically, like simultaneously as when Ellie's doing. A lot of the stuff we know about that's yet to come
Hmm.
has happened and will, I think, necessarily be told in a flashback, but it'll be like a here's what happened 2 days ago kind of flashback. It won't be,
Yeah.
so it'll just be very interesting kind of where they, where that all nets out. But these are ultimately questions for next week, tomorrow, next season, next year. Let's talk about getting to see Joel be a dad. We got to see him do dad things once or twice in the first season. Protector things, really, more than dad things. But because they have the safety and comfort of civilization in Jackson, like bartering Legos for vanilla cakes, don't ask for chocolate, it's harder. You know, what did we like? We see a side of Joel we never seen before, but in a good way.
A couple of things, just like random thoughts from that time. I love that Seth mentioned that Seth is who he gets the cake from, right? Seth mentioned that he has grandkids, and so that gave me more appreciation for his apology to Ellie and Dina earlier in the season because it gave me a sense that he's trying to do better for his grandkids. He's trying
Yeah.
to learn from his
Hey,
mistakes and
he's on the
apologize for
same
them.
cycle.
Yeah. So
Oh.
I appreciated that. I loved Joel working on the customized guitar. It gave me workbench vibes from the game.
Who doesn't love a Dremel tool?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I do love seeing the whole father daughter thing. I love that we got to just have those moments in this episode. For like half of it, it was just joyful and great, and we were all happy. But then it was also breaking my heart because we knew what was yet to come, right? Like we knew that was going to fall off at some point. And when he first brings out that guitar and shows it to Ellie, I knew it was going to be Future Days, and it still destroyed me. And the fact that that was the first song for him that came to his mind, like Ellie says, "Well, play and sing me something," and the first song that comes to mind is Future Days. That opens with the line, "If I ever should lose you, I'd surely lose myself." And to have the additional context that when Ellie sat down with the guitar in the previous episode in the theater, she played the opening line of Future Days. And so I love the added context of that song and what it means to their relationship. And so, yeah, lots of really, really great things.
I think that especially having this new context for Ellie isn't mad at Abby because of killing Joel before she got to reconcile with him. They've reconciled. Or they at least have they've said their feelings in the scene on the porch and fairly recently. What Ellie is mad about, what's been taken from Ellie, was not resolution with Joel or the start of resolution with Joel. What was taken from her was the growth that comes from that kind of moment. Like their future, like it has to be a relief to some of us out there that they at least got, Ellie got a straight answer from Joel of what happened. She now has a complete picture of what he lied about to her, and she was able to accuse him, which I think is spot on, of denying her purpose. And they really got to say to one another granted at the very last minute everything they probably were going to say, but there's no joy in that because the joy comes from what a good place or an agreement they were going to get to years down the line from now. This is when the healing starts. It wasn't 5 years ago. They've had nice moments, but I think the sad part and what was taken from Ellie was actually what happened, what would have happened every moment from now until, his death by other means.
Yeah, because we see Joel mention a couple of times in the flashbacks how nice it is when they spend time together and how he wishes they did more of that. And I mean, they were getting ready to do just that. Wasn't Ellie supposed, or wasn't she trying to go on patrol with Joel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tragic, really. Like they weren't good, but they were on the path to like get as good as they would be able to get, and that sucks. But yeah, I mean, Abby did to Ellie what Joel did to Abby.
Yeah.
Sounds like a repeat of a cycle.
We see that a lot, again and again.
Yeah. Pam, I want to know what you thought of the museum scene, because I'll just say that is my favorite scene from either of the games. I remember texting Eric about it back in the day when we were playing it for the first time. And so I just would love to hear you talk about the museum scene.
Oh, I loved it so much. I feel like the something about the way that they staged that made it feel so whimsical. And again, it just really contextualizes like how much the world has changed and how little Ellie's generation knows about what happened prior. Like the fact that she can't really fathom the idea of, something having gone to space and come back, because that world doesn't really exist anymore in the world that she lives in is insane. And I just there was something like so lovely about seeing the both of them have this moment of reprieve where they could kind of both be childlike together. It was a really, really nice start to all of these flashbacks we get. And it's kind of like the last time we really see them in that context, because even though the birthdays keep coming, they're a little more weighted and they're kind of tarnished by whatever feelings are weighing heavy on the both of them too. So it was nice, I think, to have like that little pocket of joy before we got into some of the heavier years between them.
We're in that space capsule and Ellie looks over after it and
Yeah.
there's a tear down
Oh my God,
the
that
side of
killed me.
Joel's face.
Yeah.
That he's crying because he just gave her something. And this comes from
Well, he's crying because she's happy, and it's
Yeah.
like the joy of, of like knowing that he brought her joy, and he just, like, you could tell he just loves her so much.
and this is a gift that only someone that knows you can give. This is
Right.
being seen as the feeling. This is
Right.
like somebody loves me a lot, and that can feel like a burden at times. I think at times Joel's love for Ellie does feel like a burden, even in scenes in this episode. But in that moment, it's the perfect execution of someone knowing her that well that he's able to,
Yeah.
and he's been here before. He had to grease the orrery device so that it wouldn't
Right.
be horrible and squeak. Like he
Brought
put
a rock so she could pick her helmet. Like he
Yeah!
planned
He had the
it.
Prepped
perfect
for this.
Yeah.
Oh, he's like, I'm gonna let her
God.
break glass. Also, he knows her. He knows she would
Right.
dig violence. Let's
Yeah.
break some
Absolutely.
glass.
It's
Yeah.
also just like the fact that like who knows how long he was sitting on this museum and just like getting it more and more excited about the fact that her birthday was coming up so that he could take her there. The fact that he like saved it. So not
Yeah.
only does she like get to leave Jackson, which it's clear Ellie wants to, she's getting a little stir crazy, but like they get to go on an adventure together. So it's just the two of them, and then he takes her to this place that he had been saving for her. It's really
Right. I
yeah.
loved every moment of from the seeing the dinosaur and climbing on top and the star hallway to the orrery to the space capsule, which I am using my NASA mug today. Um,
Hey, really? I
but
got my
every
dinosaur shirt
yeah.
on, my Jurassic Park shirt.
But every look of astonishment from Ellie as she discovers something new and exciting that she loves, and that was set up perfectly for her by Joel. And then every look from Joel of love and being pleased that she is
Mm-hmm.
pleased. It's just, it's oh so
What
magical.
a
I
proud
love it so
dad.
much.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
have I have artwork from it's like a sticker set that fans made from after the second game, and it's the dinosaur scene where Ellie and Joel are walking, and his T-shirt in it. I'll share it with you guys, but his T-shirt has a drawing that says "I love my gay kid." Or something. They're like really,
Oh,
they're really
That's
happy
so
together, kind
cute.
of a thing.
Yeah.
And it's really quite special. I adorned
Yeah.
my laptop with the
Well,
decals, but
and,
you know,
and speaking of that, it is like so funny that he thinks that she's like into Jesse and like she's
what's that
yeah.
classic?
She's
It's
like,
that
don't worry, I
classic.
promise I'm not gonna get preggo. Like
Yeah, or she frames it as like a well, if you do this for me, I promise I won't get preggo. It's like no,
right,
there's no real risk of
exactly.
that.
right,
Um,
Exactly.
exactly.
but
So
that there
she,
was a bit, yeah.
yeah, it's clever. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
there was
though.
a bit of like almost forced or compulsory heteronormativity at first, and I think we've all kind of gotten that from, if not our parents who may know us better, certainly an aunt or an uncle going, "Oh, well, you like her,
Right.
don't you? Huh?" And it's
The
like, well,
assumption that it's like a girl, so she has to be into the one guy that's kind of around her age.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I appreciate how imperfect kind of the rollout was. By the time we get to the New Year's dance, Joel has had years with it because he found Ellie with Kat on her 17th birthday, 2 years prior. But the moment for me sort of right after that is he tells her you don't know what you're talking about, or you're not yourself right now because she's been smoking. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that at least in there I saw a layered kind of denial, maybe of her identity from a place of he's just not seen that side of her before, so he didn't really have an opinion on what to think. So I liked that it was nuanced and complicated and kind of, not just like an oh moment. He even has that
Yeah.
great line. What we're just doing all the teenage things at once. Then it's like,
Right.
oh,
Right.
what is a dad to do? All of this happens on the same night. Yeah.
And I wonder too
Yeah.
if it's, I mean, like, you know, clearly he comes to a place of acceptance and it doesn't bother him because he's willing to stick up for his kid, right? That's the most important part. But I wonder too how much of like him kind of saying something like, oh, like basically like, your head's not in the right place kind of comes from this idea that it's like, well, there's only so many people in Jackson and there's only
Eh.
so many people like in the apocalypse. So like maybe kids are experimenting more and so then that means that the older generation just assumes that like it's just like an available body and not really somebody's actual like orientation or how they were born. So yeah, I could see like there's like
Yeah,
a lot of nuance that comes into like the idea of like where that thought process comes from.
Yeah.
I think you
I
could really kind of,
agree.
analyze it in different ways.
And Pam, something we've talked about earlier in this season is the fact that in this show, in this timeline, society fails in 2003. So there are a lot of milestones for queer people that obviously happen in our timeline that don't happen in this show. So
Mm-hmm.
if you imagine mentalities towards gay people sort of being frozen as what
Yeah,
they were in
stunted. Yeah.
2003, like it
Mm-hmm.
it does make sense Yeah, that like
Well,
doesn't
like the
justify it,
textbook
obviously.
stopping
But
too. I mean, if you think about that, like textbooks are usually older than the year that
yeah,
Yeah.
they're being
Mm-hmm.
studied. So that's actually why. I mean, and I think that that's harkening back to like earlier on this season when we see Dina and Ellie. I think they're riding through the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle. It seems
Mm.
like, and they don't know like what pride means or like why there's
yeah,
rainbows everywhere
They're
and
all
stuff.
optimists.
Right, exactly. And so that really contextualizes, to your point, Laura, the fact that like you know there's an entire generation that just doesn't know queer history, and also like so much history that was lost based on the fact that society stopped being what it was in 2003.
I have a weird feeling in that it makes me feel grateful for what we have.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
yes, queer rights are under attack. Yes, some things might even be rolled back, horrifyingly enough, and some things have been. But, even with the space capsule thing, we live in a world where we accomplished that and it isn't yet over. And I get a lot of joy from, or like, I think, yeah, it's probably pride from just knowing that, we're still part of a civilization that has a lot going for it. It gives me hope to see a show where people are sort of not even mourning the loss, but they don't have any context for what is right in front of them, for what used to be. A lot of that stuff still is. We can go to a museum tomorrow, and have these exhibits be pristine, clean, and learn something about an entire other civilization or culture. We can call people up across the globe. These are things you just can't do in the show of The Last of Us anymore. And it makes me, I don't know, I feel like packed in with like boundless energy for what we can accomplish. No show has made me feel this way specifically. I watch a lot of apocalyptic, stuff, but I haven't ever felt like, I want to go see what the nearest space exhibit is and see what it's all about. And it's like, because I can, because the world hasn't ended yet.
Yeah. It does make you think about everything we take for granted and what
Coffee.
would actually happen to all
Oh
of
my
us
God, yeah.
if the power grid failed and we had no more access to, our various devices that we depend on. Like, I don't know, when was the last time you tried to navigate somewhere without a GPS when you've
I was
never
going
been
to
there
say
before?
you'd have to learn a trade, Laura.
Yeah. God. I don't want to do that.
I know, right?
My trade is podcasting.
Well,
Maybe
you
we
could
could
run the
start an
radio
underground
room.
Radio, yeah.
You could-
the
yeah,
radio
the ra-
still works.
The radio room at Jackson, yeah.
There's maybe hope for us yet. Everyone will still need entertainment.
And next
True.
up on Songs of the 70s, here's Carole King. Yeah, I could see you doing that. But Jackson needs a DJ, Laura.
I'll keep that in mind.
But
So we
moving,
also saw in this episode Ellie get her tattoo. Well, we saw her burn her scar where she had gotten
Yeah.
bitten last season, and then later tattoo it. And we got the moth as the symbol that she has sort of taken for herself. And through Joel talking with Gail, we get an explanation for what Ellie sees the moth to be. She told Joel she read about it in a dream book and it's a symbol. And Joel's like, "Oh, change and like metamorphosis." And Gail's like, "No, that's butterflies."
it's a butterfly.
But moth is death. And I wanted to get everybody's thoughts on that. And I also had the additional symbolism for Ellie in particular of like a moth to a flame or like a compulsion to destruction.
Ooh.
So anybody's thoughts on Moth and Ellie seeing herself as death, I guess? Or
I love
death?
that when Gail is like, no, it's death, Joel just stands up. It's like, oh, hell no. And he walks away. He's like, oh no, Ellie's dreaming about death again. Like he's like, he won't have it. Like the idea of Ellie dead is so impossible for him to comprehend clearly because he's done everything he's done in his life. So the idea that she would be fantasizing about it, I mean, I think I wrote the quote down, but it's like she mentions either dreaming about it or thinking about the moth a lot, or it came to her in a dream. And if death is visiting Ellie in her dreams, that's something, yeah, Joel's going to want to like prevent at all costs. So he wasn't scared at first, but now who knows what he did. I'd love to see what he did exactly the next minute after that. He probably took her aside and was like, moths are just kind of cool, right? But like you can't really like them too much.
Yeah.
Feeling like the death is going to become contagious, but what does it say about Ellie, because she hasn't yet, like, do we think it means she feels responsible for the death of everyone in like Salt Lake City, or like what does it mean that this girl who could have been the cure for all humanity is wearing the symbol of death now?
I think she feels like she should have died. She says as much. I mean, she tells Joel on the porch that that could have been her destiny. That could have been what gave her life meaning, and he took that from her.
I
Well, it's
think
also,
it
I'm
might.
sure she questions like why is she the only one that doesn't have to die
Yeah.
at the hands of this disease? And in a way, like the fact that she is immune means that she's like in a weird sort of way closer to death than everybody who's not.
Yeah, everyone else only has the luxury of getting bit or harmed once, and she's had it happen several times.
Right. And emotionally too, like Pam, your point was what I was thinking was death not necessarily being referring to herself. Although I think there is that kind of double meaning there. I think it's also, why does death seem to follow me in like my wake, in the people that I love, from Left Behind last season to Henry and Sam to I mean, now Joel. Not that she knew that when she was getting the moth tattoo or when she accepted that as her symbol, but like Marlene, all these people who she's gotten close to, even Tess to a certain extent, have died. And I can understand maybe feeling as if that is some kind of a curse, that she is bound to this world in the way that other people aren't.
Right. Yeah, like she's the only one that can thwart it.
Mm-hmm.
And we see her like after Dina finds out, she has no problem putting herself in front of her to save her.
God, I'm also thinking like it could mean that Ellie is forced to watch as everyone around her dies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's like survivor's guilt, but also
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
not wanting to be alone. Like, Ellie lives in a reality where, I mean, she's young, and unfortunately, it's incredibly likely that she could be in a last person standing type situation with her friends, family, and everyone she loves
Yeah.
about, and that's terrifying, you
Isn't
know?
that what she says? Is it Henry? That's the younger brother, or is it Sam? That's the younger brother. In any case, when they're in the
Yeah.
room, just Ellie and the younger brother, and he's like, how are you never afraid?" And she says, "Oh, I'm afraid all the time." Doesn't she say she's afraid of being alone?
I mean, that sounds
Yeah.
right. I don't remember exactly, but I believe you.
Th- that may not be correct, but that seems to be what's pulling at my mind, is that that is ultimately what she's afraid of. And yeah, it's a terrible thought.
We are going to continue our discussion of this awesome episode, The Price, after one more break. We're back. The question on my mind next to talk about is how do we feel about Eugene's last moments in this episode? This was a scene that was kind of teed up in the beginning of the season. We know that Gail, who I loved seeing in this episode again, blames Joel for killing him, doing him dirty. We don't know, we have no context for it before tonight's episode. And now in tonight's episode, we get a man who's been bitten while on patrol. His partner on patrol is dead. We did see him briefly. Bye, Adam. But he asks for mercy, not so that he can do anything reckless or run away or become infected in the living breathing. He wants to see his wife before he dies. This is a request that Joel denies him of, but it's really not 100% clear to me exactly why he gets denied, because Joel even has Ellie like begging him and asking him, this is what we should do. And because it's Ellie, that she'd be safe even if Eugene did like break free and cause a problem. So what do we make of Joel's decision to kill Eugene anyway?
I mean, it was Ellie's first patrol, and I don't think he wanted to set the example for her to make exceptions to safety protocols on her first patrol.
It's like, if we do
That's a
this,
great
then they're
point.
always gonna be pulling people
Yeah.
in.
And I
Yeah.
think, like, to that point, like, probably worried that if she keeps doing that, she'll out herself faster
Yep.
too. It's one thing for her, like, to Eric's point, like, Joel has Ellie, like, for her to out herself in front of a dying man, but it's another thing for her to do it when he's not around and there's like 4 other people on patrol. So it's
Well,
tough.
I do wonder though what the environment is, because when Ellie asks Joel where he gets the coffee at the end of, or he volunteers, I'm not happy with what I did to get it. He talks about the people that were coming through last week. So are there people that are like visiting Jackson but only temporarily? They're passing through. Like, the reason I ask that in frame of this question is, if Joel is really worried about keeping the rules and stuff, it seems like they're safe enough that they're a little bit they can afford to be a little bit more lax. Like, it doesn't mean that Ellie is always going to be doing this, but I guess it's a parent's call.
Yeah, and I guess like we really don't know, like, unless I missed it, how far away they are from base camp. Like
Yeah.
it becomes a what if situation. Like, yes, he was stable when they found him, but like, will he stay stable through the journey back? Like, would he
Hmm.
have, or would he have turned and they would have had to kill him anyway? Like, we don't know. There's a lot of what if situations. At
Right,
least
and
that's
like
how I see it.
the horse situation, they only had two horses between them, and like
Right.
who was going to ride, and
Ah,
like if he
the
started to turn, or if he
logistics.
or if he tried to make a
Yeah.
break for it, like they might have to shoot. Like there is a lot that I think went into consideration, and I still don't know if Joel was necessarily making the right choice, but I think there's maybe even a little bit of I'm the father and I know best going on, and
Mm-hmm. I think
um,
so too.
yeah, continuing that cycle of parents doing the best they can and trying to make decisions to protect other people, even if it was insensitive, even if it wasn't as caring as it could have been. Um, but I did like the the parallel that Joel gives Ellie with the end of last season, when she does convince him to let them bring Eugene to this to back to Jackson, and she says, I'll go get the horses. I'll come back. I'll meet you on the trail." And he says, "Okay, I promise." Which isn't "I swear," but it's close enough. And Ellie, we already saw earlier in that flashback, was having severe doubts about the whole Salt Lake City situation and had written out questions that she was going to grill Joel over. And
Mm-hmm.
they weren't questions that she was like genuinely trying to find the answer to. It was like, "I know the truth and I'm needling you to get you to tell me the truth yourself." Um, and that opportunity for Joel to say the same thing, nearly make the same kind of promise to her that he did at the last end of the last season, and then for him to not follow through with that promise, is all the confirmation she needs to realize that this is not the first time he's done this to her.
Yeah, and then
Mm-hmm.
She
for
she
her also to say you swore, and then he knows,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what this is
that
really
it's
about.
twofold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he broke 2 promises, and she knows that, and he knows that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just she gets to see him, because I think it's really, we know why Joel did this with Eugene, but he did a monstrous thing. Um, I think
Yeah.
that, especially because Ellie went through the test with him and was like, he has time, there was really not a lot. Like, Joel would have us think it was a lot more of a close call. In fact, we see that in how he lies to Gail. He has absolutely no qualms about making all this heroic shit up about how Eugene did it himself and he wished he could have got back to you, but he did the right thing. He was so brave. And like, Ellie is right to throw that in his face, not just because she wants to punish Joel, but because I think she wants everyone to be saved from ever having to believe one of his lies, especially one that happens right in front of her because she has felt the pain of being told a lie from him.
I guess I feel like that's fairly harsh. I think that like I I saw it less of him wanting to play the hero, more of just like wanting to offer a sense of peace and comfort to somebody that just lost their husband. And I think that when Ellie does that, she does that more to hurt him than she does to like she doesn't bear a second glance to Gail's feelings in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that it's kind of cruel of her to snatch that sense of peace away from somebody who was innocent in all of that at the behest of basically having the last word and throwing Joel under the bus. I think that like that's a moment of like rage and I, you know, like I don't know, like if I would be curious to know if Ellie regrets the fact that it hurts Gail in the process, regardless of how she feels about psychiatrists or anything like that. You know?
Yeah. No, the toll that Ellie's words have on Gail is a great call out because yeah, I don't actually think Ellie did that to save Gail any pain. Now that I'm
No.
thinking about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like when like this is like such a bad analogy, but it's kind of like when people like when somebody cheats, right? And like they tell their partner, it's like more to appease them of their own guilt and to unburden themselves of
Right.
the guilt than it is to like be honest and truthful
Well,
with the
although some of it
person.
is to
Yeah.
prevent recurring behavior, though.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, but I
y-
think like a lot of it is just like I can't deal with the guilt anymore. I have to tell you what I did, you know.
yeah.
So then it's like, you know, I kind of akin it to that in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really, like, regardless, in this moment, Ellie isn't thinking about Gail.
Mm-hmm.
Ellie is not thinking about the tragedy of the situation. She is projecting her existing distrust of Joe or Joel, not Joe.
No,
Um,
Joe's doing fine, by the
yeah,
way.
yeah. Joe's
Yeah.
he's just in jail getting letters from his crazy obsessive fans in New York. If you want to know more about that, check out our coverage of You season 5. But anyway, you know, I really think that she's projecting a lot of her rage and her anger about, you know, what Joel did to her onto this situation, and this situation gives her the ammo that she feels like she needs to really pop off at him, to be like, look, see, like, I'm not crazy. You may feel like you can gaslight me and tell me that things happened a certain way in Salt Lake City when I know they didn't, and now here's my evidence that you're a liar and that you make promises you won't keep.
We couldn't have hoped for a better, I think, one-to-one situation comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that like I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting this at all to match up so perfectly as it does, and to have it's just such a it's a brilliant choice and a brilliant way
Mm-hmm.
to kind of give her everything she needs to finally kind of realize what's going on.
Right. And it also says a lot about Gail that she ended up giving Joel therapy anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is, like, I mean, Gail, she's not stupid, and she, I'm sure, knows what the rules of Jackson are. I'm sure this is a pretty firm rule that you don't bring someone who's been bitten close to town. You just don't
Right.
do that. I mean, they have patrols, like, literally, they basically have snipers on the walls around town. Like,
Yeah.
they're really trying to stop that from happening. So Gail understands that she's not special. She's not any more special than anyone else in Jackson. So she knows it's not actually realistic to have
Right.
expected that. And I think that's why she says that to Joel. She's like, I know that, I like intellectually everything makes sense, but emotionally I fucking hate you.
Hmm.
Right.
And I
And I think
love that
she
we
like it's
have
the
to
same
sit
with
with
like
that.
you killed my husband. She says,
Yeah,
but she knows that he didn't really kill her
right.
husband. Her husband was already dead.
Hmm.
Do we? I mean, but the lie or knowing that Joel lied to her probably hurts her more than if he had told the truth.
I think it was that I think it was heat of the moment, and also I think it was less that he lied to her and more that he gave Eugene, it's Eugene, right? False hope,
Yeah.
False hope.
in the sense that he said he was going to bring him back and he didn't.
Yeah.
Because hope is a powerful thing, and you can see
Well,
like Eugene struggling with that when he realizes that he just took him to a pretty place, a nicer
ye-
place to die.
yeah. Well, and it's also Joel is playing God here a little bit. Obviously, and showing some mercy, not in doing what Eugene wants, but taking him to a nice place before shooting him in the back of the head. But it's an interesting exchange that he has between Eugene and Joel because Eugene is asking to see Gail, and Joel kind of takes a moment and is like, "Well, you see the ones you love all the time. They're always in front of you." Like he's deciding it's good enough for Eugene just to imagine Gail's face when it's not the same as actually seeing that person. And what I loved, one of my like top 3 lines of this episode was what Eugene says is, "It's not that I need to give her my last words. I need to know what hers are." And that's a heck of a, I don't know,
Yeah,
that line I'll just be
it
thinking about
is.
forever.
But I also just think it was like, in a way, it was kind of wrong of him to even ask for special treatment, because like then
Yeah.
you think about like the aftermath of that big battle they had in season 2. How many people did they have to shoot that got bit that didn't get to wait until their loved ones that were literally like 5 feet away
Yeah,
came up
Yeah.
to say goodbye? It's and they were way closer than Eugene was. So
that's a good point.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough, but like that's just the world that they live in.
Yeah. And it's also, I think, for Eugene, a natural thing to have done out of desperation. Like,
Yeah, dying man's wish.
totally. I probably would have done the same thing, to be honest
Right.
with
Too
you. And I
bad. Too
would
bad.
have been,
FaceTime doesn't work anymore. Right.
right? Right?
All those
And
cell
man, I would have
towers
been
are
so
down.
pissed if I were in Eugene's shoes when Joel walked me around in front of the beautiful lake. I would have been like, "You son of a bitch."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's so funny. The I want to kind of shout out the brilliance of the adaptation here, um, in just acknowledging that like Gale is a showism. Gale does not exist in the
Hmm.
game, and in the game, Eugene, we do not meet him alive. He is a character who lived to be about 70 before having a heart attack. And when Ellie and Dina are on patrol in the game, they visit an area where Eugene was sort of last, repairing radio equipment, and they talk about how unusual it is to live to an old age in this world. He died of natural causes, essentially. So it serves a certain purpose in the game that's really interesting as like a footnote of an interesting thing. But they managed to take that character and give him so much more importance. And not only that, but the level of legwork that Gail has done to make this show approachable from an audience standpoint to see into these characters the way that her existence does is really such a masterstroke. Like, and I love Gail as her own separate character, but like watching, literally looking at what it is in the game and looking at what it is in the show, oh my god! Like what they've done in the show with these characters is brilliant.
Yeah, it's another example of an enhancement to the story.
I think so
Full
too.
stop. Yeah.
Um, and I think we should also call out that the flashback that I think that was changed the most, apart from adding the Eugene thing, is that there is, I guess, a birthday or a moment when Ellie steals off with probably with Shimmer and goes back to the hospital in Salt Lake. And it's
Hmm.
standing, and Joel goes after her, and it's this reckless run across the country. You don't see any of it, but like we see them meet back up in front of the hospital, and I think that's where Joel eventually clear to Ellie, or Ellie says, I'm pissed at you because I know either she found a tape recording of what really happened, like Marlene's confessional or something. But I appreciate that Ellie does not go back to the hospital because I bet people are watching the hospital. Probably very dangerous for her to go there. But I like that they were able to keep it just straight in Jackson and kind of show a way for Ellie to figure this out definitively without leaving Jackson and putting herself at risk and making everything more complicated. So, like, really just, I call those things out specifically to show that the show managed to keep them in one location, and it didn't feel lazy at all. It actually felt better. So that's kind of just wild for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, what are we predicting for next week? I mean, I know we got a preview, but to be honest with you, I still feel like there's a lot that is probably being left unteased.
Girl, I have no idea. I have no idea what we're getting next week. It's just absolutely. Pam, what do you think is next week?
I was going to say, I feel a lot better about not knowing what to expect. I mean, I really just don't know what's going to happen. I feel like Ellie's a loose cannon, especially once her rage switch flips, and we kind of know that that's already happened. That's at least as far as like the state at which she leaves Nora. So tensions are high, and I'm sure that can only mean chaos. But yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I kind of have spoilery thoughts about how I think they might end the season, so I won't go into it now.
Okay.
But I'll be curious to know. I'll be curious to see like where the split is and how accurate like what I'm kind of picturing in my head might end up being or not.
I'll text
maybe
you right
it's-
after this.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to know
maybe
what
it's
you're
how I hope
thinking.
it's going to end, but
Yeah.
really, I
I
don't know.
mean,
I'm
I'll
just
take
trying
my
to think of what would
headphones
make
out
sense.
for.
Oh,
a few
okay. Yeah,
minutes.
Pam, walk away. No,
Yeah,
no,
hold
no,
on.
it's fine.
No,
No.
no. I mean,
No,
I
don't.
want it
It's
on
okay.
record.
No, don't. This shouldn't be in the episode. Yeah, but but we should feel. Look. I for one go into next week going, yeah, I don't know how they're gonna do it. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about the season as a whole because I don't know where they're ending it and why and what we'll get every moment until then. But I feel lucky to kind of come into it with knowing that there's plenty that they could show and there will be a reason ultimately for it. I mean, every choice, including up to this episode, I think it was absolutely the right choice, and I have that confidence going in now. So it's like going into next week, I'm like, there's a lot they could show. Wonder what they will, but I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Do we think we'll see more Uncle Grumpy? Is Pedro wrapped on the show? Like,
I think
no
he's
more
probably
little
wrapped.
sprinkly flashbacks here?
I don't know. It seemed like from the making of, it really seemed like they were treating Pedro to like a wrap party on set when they were
Like
shooting
his
at
own,
the
like Pedro's last
museum.
day? Yeah.
Yeah, and that I was like, oh, does that mean we're really not getting any more Pedro after this?
Yeah, but they also shoot out of order. Like I felt like they gave us that same
True.
vibe with this episode 2 behind the scenes. So
Well, really, the interesting thing at this point is if we get more Joel, I think it's safe to say that it isn't going to be anything else adapted from the game. Like anything else
agree.
we see of Joel is going to be like something new of Joel that we haven't seen before in either medium. And not that I don't necessarily want that or I'm not interested in what they might do with something like that. I just don't know how likely it is at this moment. Although I could maybe see them doing something with that in season 3.
Well, I also want to make kind of a random prediction that if we do get more Joel flashbacks, it'll be as seen or remembered by Tommy. Tommy is still in this fight. Tommy is in Seattle, we heard Jesse say. We have not yet seen him in Seattle. We don't know what state he's in, but he is a character that I'd like to see a lot of time spent with next week because we haven't yet properly seen him kind of on his arc of either vengeance or retrieval of Ellie, what he's doing, why he's doing it, and certainly the way in which he honors his brother or either through protecting her the way that Joel asked him to do in season 1 or through getting his own form of revenge. We just don't know what Tommy's going to do, and I'd love to see the show utilize more like early Joel, Tommy flashbacks, ones that don't exist in the games because I can't think of any, but ones that would ultimately be a way of showing that character, but also not having it be centered around Ellie's story and her motivations, like from now on. Because I think we've seen as much as we would ever need to about how Joel's life and his relationship with Ellie affects Ellie. So I'd like to start seeing how it applies to other people if we do still see Pedro again.
Yeah. I also think we know there are some story beats ahead of this moment just in the overall narrative. And so that we know there are multiple options for like the way they want to end this season. And I guess I just feel like if they're going to end on one of those moments, I don't know that they have time to do another in-depth character exploration at this point unless they do it from that character's point of view. Maybe
Yeah.
we still see, you know, the sequence of events that we know are to come play out, but maybe it's from Tommy's point of view. Who knows? Or
It'd
maybe
be
it's from
fun.
Jesse's point of view, like, because we know he's there as well.
Yeah. Questions. Questions. Was there anything else from tonight's episode that we wanted to shout out before being on our way?
I thought it honestly, again, I'll just reiterate, I thought that the flashbacks themselves were really masterfully done. And I was just so impressed by like the level of attention to detail and how they were really able to capture the way those scenes played out in the game. To bring them to life in the TV show was really, really cool to see. But then to also see kind of how they enhanced that through the way those characters are portrayed in the TV show. I don't know. It got me really teary eyed multiple
Well, and
times during the episode.
honestly,
It
kind
took
of
me back to when I was playing.
Yeah, well, you know what made me teary-eyed was realizing that Neil Druckmann directed this episode. And so he's already directed actors to do these scenes and has had to sit through every creative meeting and really just craft this narrative and this story all years ago. And now has been obviously a driving force for the entire show, but to sit there in the director's chair of this episode and really put, I think, a loving touch as he has loved these characters and known these characters as head writer for so many years, to be the one in the director's chair for this episode feels very special to me. And that, I think, is another reason, on top of having everyone in the production also be fans of the game, another reason why this episode is so very, like, I think cutting, but also like special. So
Yeah. I think this is my favorite episode of the season.
Yeah, I think it's probably mine so far too.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so well done. Yeah, I can't wait. It's interesting to see how they're doing this, and I love that they kind of moved around like where the heavy emotional impact episode was in the season, because last season I think we all
Yeah.
agreed it was earlier, and I think this season it came a little later, but yeah, I just yeah, this one definitely stuck with me, and I think it will stick with me for some time.
I feel the same. So let's
Yeah.
tell our listeners where they can find us on social media. Laura, you got this?
Yeah, for sure. So we are What the Hype Podcast. You can subscribe to our show wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also head over to whatthehypepodcast.com, where you can find all of our various social channels as well as links to the various podcasting apps where you can find us. We are What the Hype Podcast here on YouTube as well as on Twitch, TikTok, and Instagram. And we are What the Hype Show on X, if you still use that. I personally don't. But we would love it if you would give us a follow wherever it is that you follow podcasts or content creators. And especially if you're on YouTube, We would love it if you would do us the favor to give us a follow, subscribe to us. We are very, very close to hitting 500 subscribers on YouTube. We're a small show and we are trying to grow our platform. So, any follows and any engagement really, really helps us. Thank you so much for tuning in with us tonight.
Thank you, and thank you to Pam and Chelsea for joining us as always.
Always glad to
And
be here.
next week with the finale, we again don't know what to expect, but we'll be here afterwards recording as usual. Say, if it's a 90-minute episode, great. We'll be here at half an hour later,
Yep. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on the premiere. We'll update the time if need be.
That makes a lot of sense. But yes, well, thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep. Same time, same
Bye.
place. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.